think it's 6 o'clock, everybody. Uh, we about to, okay, we're good to start? All right. Hello, everyone again. So before, can we get a quick sound check through those joining online? Is that everything good?
Yeah, just ask James.
So they can hear us?
It's good here, Juan. Yes, we're good.
Oh, thank you, Lolly. Okay, great. And also one reminder, there might be, I think there is another event going on tonight in this venue, so there may be some sound while we might be disturbing us. So, welcome to the April 2026 RAB meeting for the former Badger Army Ammunition Plant. Again, my name is Quan Nguyen, and I'm with the U.S. Army Environmental Command. And also joining with me is also from U.S. Army Environmental Command is Lolly Laxberg, who is our Public Affairs Officer, who is joining us online. It's good to see everyone again since January, and I know I keep on repeating myself, but we really appreciate the community interest in support of the Badger cleanup program, and of course, special shout out to the dedications of you, the RAB members. So thank you again. And if you have any questions during this presentation, feel free to ask me or us at any time, and I would try my best to answer your questions tonight. And if I don't have an answer, I will for sure get back with you with a response. So with that being said, here is tonight's agenda. This was emailed to the RAB members last week, and we distributed a revised version yesterday, removing a agenda item, a RAB membership agenda item that should not have been on there. So I apologize for that confusion. So for roll call, if you haven't signed in, just make sure you sign in if you're attending in person. And for those that are joining online, we will be taking notes of those in attendance. The January 2026 meeting minutes were distributed to the RAB members on March 13th, incorporating some of the applicable comments that we received. And again, we appreciate everybody's that provided those comments to us. Also, at the request of one of the commentators, we also distributed to the RAB members several of the Army's and WDNR's responses to those questions. So hopefully you guys had a chance to review those questions. And I will pause at this moment to see if anybody has questions on those before we can move forward with considering finalizing the meeting minutes. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to just bring it up on later on. So the other agenda would be the Spec Pro will be providing a presentation on the results of the Selling Pond site inspections. This data was previously presented to the RAB members, I believe, actually April of last year. And so that's nothing really new in terms of the data, but we want to take this opportunity tonight to reshare that information with you again. And then I will go over the status of some of the projects requirements for Badger. And at this time, I guess for the opening remarks, I want to give the opportunity to the co-chair, Michelle Hobbs, to see if she has any remarks that you would like to provide.
Just my usual. Please ask questions. And then also Kwang had said for our July meeting, we are looking for topics. And so if there's something that you would like to learn about, if you could give Kwang or send him an email, and that will help us to develop that agenda. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Michelle. So my email is located down there, and or just if you have any time, you call me if you have any ideas. I would try my best to look for the proper person relating to that topic to be available for that. So yes, if you have any suggestions, feel free to ask. And for my opening remark, also based on several questions that I've been receiving, I'd like to take an opportunity at the end of the RAB meeting, if we do have time, to kind of go over some of the websites or resources where where the members can find, the public can find the reports and documents and where they're located. So, with that opening remark, we will begin with the presentation of the settling pond. Joel?
For the red pointer?
You can use this, it's more easier.
No, the red pointer, is that? Oh, a cursor? Okay,
And it's nice for the people that are online to see it, for you to be using the cursor.
okay. All right. So in July of last year, or it's actually April of last year's RAB meeting, we gave a very similar presentation on the settling ponds soil inspection report and what was going on. We had mostly the exceedances updated in that plan, so forgive me if there's a lot of repetition, but it was still very applicable, and seeing it's been a year, figured there's another opportunity for other people to get feedback on it, what questions you might have, just to get an update. So we did submit the report into the DNR, and so instead of just the summary report, we do have the full inspection report submitted to them, so they're currently doing a review. So here's an opportunity to get this information out there for, even if you hadn't seen this before. So we had settling ponds 1 and 3, Final Creek, and then the soil disposal area. So on this map, if you're looking at the far left, everything on this side, including Final Creek, Settling Pond 1, is on Bluffview Sanitary District property, and everything to the right is on DNR property.
I don't think we see the cursor.
Though he didn't, oh, so the cursor doesn't show up. Okay. All right, so where is that display? Okay. Sorry. I thought,
Yeah, this is, where's, if we close this and see if the cursor shows real quick. Does the cursor show on the screen? Okay, so maybe we just go like that and let's just, oops. Hide that,
it has shown other times, but.
yeah. And then go back and get some TikTok expert to do this.
There you go. Okay, all right, so I was saying that on the left side here where this road divide is, that is Bluffview, so that's Final Creek in 1, and then on the right side, everything else is on DNR property, which is open. So in 2021, after the fire had happened in Settling Pond 2, there was a separate site inspection of the soil. And then everything has been well done. All of the field data was done in 2024. And just a reminder that Settling Pond 4 is located right down before Gruber's Grove Bay, and that will be in an upcoming investigation.
Question, Joel. I thought Settling Pond 4 was actually underneath the, partially underneath the road.
You can ask the rest.
Sorry, what happened to it?
Oh, you close it, that's
I
right.
hit return. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, this is better,
Okay,
yeah.
there is an empty slide.
Oh,
Okay,
was
whatever.
that- okay.
Sorry. You had a question?
Well, it was just a comment. I thought that most of Sutherland Pond 4 was actually under what's now Highway 78.
Yes, part of it is, but there is still a part back on the old Badger plant, on the north side, yeah.
So that leads me to another question. Are you gonna, or have you sampled the soil that's under the road? Or is
Oh.
that considered kind of off limits now?
Before the road was built, there was a bunch of investigation done, and so there was discussions with the Army about either relocating soil or burying certain things that were allowable. So there was an agreement with the DOT and the DNR at that time. There also is a parcel before you get to Gruber's Grove Bay that's all covered, which was investigated between Highway 78 and the plant boundary, which used to be a ditch. Some of that was excavated and then it was closed with a soil cover, which was sort of like settling Pond 4. So that is a cover within the guidance, so can't be disturbed. So that actually eliminates any water from getting into Gruber's Grove Bay by that whole project. They blinded any culvert that could get into Gruber's Grove Bay from Badger.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So we had 64 different locations throughout all those sites. We went down to 5 feet. Some of the sites had numerous locations vertically within them. The intent was to try to evaluate the very surface soil. So right up there where people can touch it immediately and not just worrying about all the below depth soil. So lots of samples from the 1/2 foot zone were collected. And then obviously we're looking at some of the deep areas where the spoils are. The spoils were moved in Settling Pond 3 up into higher elevation zones, either in soil disposal areas or along Settling Pond 3 to make it a pond, more like instead of a ditch. We had explosive analysis, so that'd be DNT, nitroglycerin, TNT, HMX, so that's like high melting explosive, and then trinitrotoluene. Semi-volatiles also are DNTs, but then production chemicals like diambutyl phthalate and diphenylamine are also included in that list. And then metals, and then extra samples that were nitrocellulose from some, and then volatile organic compounds from some. Okay.
Laura wanted to know, is there a little corner piece of land that is actually USDA land on that? Little corner piece of land that's
Oh, that is possible. Might be a little bit, yeah, it's a little complicated. Maybe part of Settling Pond 4. Yeah, I have to pull up my parcel map to figure it out again.
It's right there where the road will cross if it's anywhere. But just based on your dotted line there, I don't think that it would be, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. So for this, we were using an EPA screening level for industrial soil. So just as a overview to see, not that it should be remediated, just if we needed to continue with investigation. So clearly, we found contamination that exceeded standards, and so an investigation will continue. So we can just forget about any worrying about what standard it is. There will be an investigation, and we need to work with the DNR going forward about what standards are used. So it's all something that's worked on in the next process. It's not this is the number here that you see, you know, for D&T. It's something that we need to reevaluate again during the RI. So we were discussing that with the DNR about at some point we need to have these discussions during like a risk assessment process and all of those steps of CERCLA. So no VOCs were exceeded. Let's see, so we had D&T, 2,4,6, nitroglycerin, arsenic, and we do have maps for all of those throughout this process. So we have 2,4 and 2,6 exceeded within the final creek, settling ponds, and spoil disposal areas. And then there's 3 spoil disposal areas listed here which did not have D&T exceedances. And then the shallow, the samples down to 1.5 foot had the most exceedances. So that's really the surface where the lake, the pond, lake area, the ditches, all of that, of where we have to look for it. So deepest sample was in settling pond 1, and that was at 5 feet. So 15.6 did exceed the, so you had 7.4, so we do have the exceedance there. So we did have a listing of the maximum value. So 2.4 is 750, and that was found at 1/2 foot within the middle of settling pond 1 in a ditch, a former ditch area, and then 63 ppm for settling pond 1 for 260 D&T. So the previous maximum of those 2.4 was 660 in all investigations. And so for people that may not remember, the settling ponds has been investigated since the 90s. Back in 93, there was many investigations. This is just the last one that's been happening, but there have been many previous investigations in the past, and of course remediations going on. And then 41 had been the highest recorded in for 260 D&T. So that's the entire site of all the samples that have been collected by our Army in the past. So this is going to be a little small, but you can't read all the text. All the dots showing where we had discussed all those samples. So we're talking about Final Creek. So Final Creek on the left here, all of the red X's along the creek are where we had either a 2.4 or 260 D&T exceedance. So there is quite a bit of this is approximately a mile long, and then the bike trail runs through the middle of Final Creek, and then the start of settling pond 1 here, and there's the most detections through settling pond 1. And we did focus on a ditch that used to be there prior to the pond being constructed in Vietnam. So a lot of the samples are right down the middle where the aerial photography and the topography show that there is still quite a ditch, and it's about as wide in some areas as the table width, so it could be 10 to 15 feet where there is a low spot. And so that is where these highest concentrations have been to date. So we focus that because with this inspection, we are looking for the worst case scenario, and we're going to move forward if we do with the investigation. So we're not trying to find the vertical extent or the horizontal extent. That is for the next phase. So you're going to be stepping out, evaluating where all of these detections are. Did we get the vertical? Is it 5 feet deep? Is it deeper than that? And is it laterally further away than where we're showing some of these exceedances? Yep. Go ahead, Laura.
I had a question on the previous slide, and there's that little corner of settling pond number 4 that's like southeast of where the old highway used to be. Is there such dairy forage land there? Or was that?
I have to look at a different map. I don't have that.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, well, this map is larger. I know Dennis was saying there could be, but,
I think that last little green bit might be on our land. We'll have to look at where exactly the line is, and I don't recall that particular area, because that's an area that we don't do anything with, so I'm not familiar with where the line actually is. I've got it on the map, I just don't have it.
yeah, I just can't recall off the top of my head now if there is. There is a road that's constructed across Settling Pond 4 that's shown that wasn't there before. And it was constructed specifically so that the USDA had access to the other side where their property is. And that was built by DOT.
Okay, and then on the following slide, where you talk about what the soil samples were analyzed for, does, I don't have a list of the chemicals of concern that were identified for settling ponds, but did you cover all of those in your testing?
Yeah, so this current slide showing is all the explosive scan, the semi-volatile scan, metals that are listed, a VOC scan, and then nitrocellulose.
Okay. I can talk to you offline, but I'd like to know what the method was. What test method, laboratory test method was used for each?
Yeah, it's all listed in the report, which EPA test method each one has, and then the lab reports are in the appendices of that report too.
Okay, a pretty big document for us. Fine.
Okay.
So, I appreciate that you tested for the high explosives. That was 8330B, if I recall, test method.
Yes.
So you tested for much more than HMX and TNT?
Yeah, it includes the full list that every other site would do. It's we didn't cherry pick any particular or compounds, so it includes stuff like petin. I mean, that's where you have some of 2-nitrotoluene or 3-nitrotoluene. Those are all in there.
Okay, the degradation products, in other words.
Just whatever the scan is. That
Okay.
degradation is a different parameter scan.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It mentions 2,4 and 2,6 DNT. Have you tested for all the isomers? Because I know the groundwater standard is for all 6.
No, this current plan did not include the other 4 isomers.
Is this something Army is going to pursue as part of the next phase?
Yeah, the Army can definitely take a look at that, and we can see how, even though the other 4 isomers doesn't have any enforceable standards or cleanup standards to it, but we can see how collecting at certain areas could help assist with the next phase of the investigations in terms of, the conceptual site models and see what the overall risk is.
Okay, I think I caught most of that. Yeah.
Sorry.
If you're able to get closer to your microphone, it kind of cuts out a little bit. But what I understood is that the next phase you're expecting would include testing soils and or sediments for all the PNT isomers?
Well, the next phase, I think the Army can definitely take a look at that request. I was mentioning that, since the isomers doesn't have any cleanup standards, having said that, we could somehow incorporate testing those isomers at certain locations that could help us in building a better review investigation.
That would be awesome. That'd be awesome. And I do appreciate, I don't know if I said it, I think I did, the testing for the high explosives. That was a really important information. That's all I had on that slide. I think Joel, you were up to the next slide.
Oh yeah, I'm on a map. Oh, we went forward.
Oh,
There we are. D&T map.
Oh, then I guess I didn't have questions before that. One of the things that, there's a number of maps, and I can share this if it's helpful, where there's areas in and around the settling ponds that are actually considered meadow wetlands. I know the DNR has done inventories of that. There's areas there. It's not, some of the areas are not perennially have water, but some of them, especially now they're quite, with rain, they're quite visible. So I guess I would like some clarity. I don't need it this second, maybe consulting with DNR that does the surveys, to find out if we should also be characterizing them as sediments, and I don't know how your testing methods change, but I would think perhaps the receptors might change. That was one thing that, if you could get, like, for the next RAB meeting, some more information about that.
So far,
Other,
well, can I just answer the first part of it? So everything was treated just like soil. So nothing currently there is underwater. It's all, you could get a machine on top of it, so we don't have to use any flotation devices. It's all pretty firm material throughout the entire site. So any standing water has been gone away for, I guess, a few years. So we treated it all as just soil at the moment. So any sediment or wetland related issue, if there is, would definitely be something during the next RI phase of the project, if there is some concern about that.
okay, that would be good. I know I provided DNR with photographs that, because we like to go walking out there, where just about every time we go, especially, there's surface water here. But if that can be looked at, that's great. Then the other question I have is the list of what you tested for in the screening process. And then there's also the list of chemicals of concern, COCs. Does the test methods that you use include all of the, like the list we had in the infield conditions approval, but now it's in another form?
So all the VOCs that would be in like the groundwater were included. As far as the metals go, so back the other way. So the metals of aluminum, arsenic, chromium, lead, mercury, tin, and zinc, those were derived from the previous investigations in the settling ponds and what stood out as most potential concerning. Going back to even like the ecological risk assessment that was done at the settling ponds.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how those metals were determined to be of potential interest.
Could you, for the next RAB meeting, could you put, because we have a table that shows what the identified contaminants of concern are, and then what you tested for, so we can see if there's some that we would like to see added or aren't necessary. But you follow what I'm saying?
So all of these parameters that I'm showing about the explosives, SVOCs, metals, VOCs, there's only a few parameters that exceeded soil regional screening level. So the list is in there. It's a couple hundred or more different compounds that were from, because the SVOC test is probably possibly in the 70, or same with VOCs, various compounds. So is that all you're looking for, is the list of all of those?
Well, I'm looking for what inputs you have for calculating risk.
Oh, we are not at
We're
the,
not there yet.
yeah, we cannot talk about
Right.
risk yet, yeah.
Right, but, okay. I'm trying to, let me think about that for a minute.
And just to clarify, at this stage, when we do the SI, that we do testing on a full suite of compounds that is based on what we think that the past operations at the Army would have released, right? And that would become a wet list, and whatever compounds that exceeds the screening levels, that becomes a contaminant of potential concern. And once you get to the RI phase, which is the next phase, that is where you do additional, extent and delineations, and then do the risk analysis. And from that risk analysis assessment, that will produce, based on receptors and concentration, that would determine the list of the actual COCs for the 7 parts.
Right.
So I just want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I guess what I was hoping is to, if we could look at what were identified as contaminant concern later on and then are no longer, we're not monitoring for it. It'd be helpful to see. I could talk to you about this offline too. Then the last question I had is, I noticed that, I know what the RSLs are, they're just screening numbers, but it specifically says industrial, and I was wondering, maybe DNR can explain exactly, I'm confused by this terminology because when they did the risk assessments for like the Bluffview lands at the beginning part of the settling ponds, that was the only land parcel that was transferred, utilized where they applied these industrial risk levels, based on expected exposure. Like you're not going to be having a garden, you'll just be working there, and so you wouldn't be there as long as we actually live there, versus the recreator kind of risk assessment. So I'm trying to understand the difference between the two, and with the industrial RSL, does that mean that the parcel when they decided on the level of cleanup, that there was exposures meant for workers, not the general public, and then we have recreator, and are they, it seems like the industrial soil levels are being applied to areas that are actually recreator based cleanups.
Luke or Isaac, do you want to weigh in yet, or?
Yeah, and maybe, correct me if my understanding is incorrect here, but I think at this stage, those industrial RSLs you're talking about here are kind of that screening level to see presence, absence, like you had mentioned earlier.
Right.
So, and you've also mentioned too that that's the presence, absence. Do we need to expand our sampling? Yes, so that's when we get into the next kind of horizontal extent. And at that stage, that's where we would work with you all, I guess, actually after that, for the cleanup levels, for what that would be. And then for a little context, so this is just screening, presence, absence. Yes, it's there. We'll expand the investigation. And for a little context, at least under state, the way that we regulate state standards specifically, we typically fall under 3 buckets: residential, commercial, or industrial. And Laura, to your point, it gets at that exact, end game. What is the use if it's industrial, commercial, residential? And so since this doesn't fall into really any of those buckets, it's that recreator, that's where we'll work with the Army on determining what's the best recreator standard that we'll clean up to. So at this stage, it's not so much that the investigation's done and it's done to this industrial standard. It's more so that's a screening number that was used. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah. So originally, when you had the site closed, we did a recreator standard, and it was very specific, and we tried to evaluate that. So it's possible we would work that again during the RI phase, but it will not affect where the investigation is. So this number that you see about the RSL industrial, that won't screen out oh, well, that one's okay. No, it's still gonna be evaluated for full degree and extent, because we don't have an agreement with the DNR yet on those values.
Okay. So, to frame a question here, just give me a second, I gotta think here. So industrial, I'm assuming that the recreator screening level, or the standards that were set, and are these numbers similar to what was the approved level of cleanup, the highest concentrations that were found? Because to me, it seems it's crazy that if our goal was to clean up to around 7, and 750 milligrams per kilogram is still out there, and the same thing with nitroglycerin, why do we still have numbers this high? This is really upsetting and surprising to me.
So the number, I believe, was 11.4 I don't have it written, I think 11.4 for 2,4 and 260 and T together. And I think that's how we had to clean up before. The samples that I selected to choose started from scratch and reevaluated the entire site again to evaluate where is the worst case scenario now. And there was probably a more robust evaluation of the site in that way. Even though I've worked there for 20-some years, I didn't really run the whole remediation before. I was doing other things, and so I didn't get to see all the things that we see now. And the same thing with propellant grains. I didn't realize that they were even out there. I was never told that they existed, like on the ground. So all these things with a new, fresh set of eyes, looking at where the worst case is, and this is where, Quan and I talked about it. No, we actually believe these are the best places away from where we used to. And there were excavations nearby, a lot of the sample points that we collected. But the excavations were very small, and I just moved down maybe 100 feet or 150 feet, and yes, you have more D&T. So they did not investigate all of the settling pond 1 in the manner that you see. There was very different locations.
So when you say
The Army, whoever was working on behalf, because the Army had multiple contractors even before our company came around that had worked on the settling ponds.
So Spectro was not responsible for achieving the soil cleanup through excavation, etc.?
Our company was directed by the Army on all of that cleanup effort.
Well, not to be rude, but why should we, being in public, hire you again if you left so much? Not you personally, but why the big F up? Like, this is crazy. And to actually have material out in the ground that you can identify with your bare hands or your eyes, and so it's really, you can imagine, you hire somebody to paint your house and there's no paint on it, and you pay for it. But this is really significant to me because with the high explosives, I've been doing some homework here, yes, Frank, hit my whole desk covered with papers trying to understand this. But I've been able to, I know from reading EPA reports, etc., that the high explosives that have been detected in the subsurface are much more mobile than the DNTs. So what does that mean? If the DNTs are slower, this is especially with the sand and gravel aquifer, that where are these high explosives in groundwater, and we don't know, and we haven't tested for it that I'm aware of. And I know the first settling pond report that we talked about before, settling pond number 2, I'm trying to figure out how to go forward here. We don't know where it is. And we've known for a long time that high explosives were out of Badger, and for 20 years I've been asking on behalf of the community to test for high explosives in the groundwater, and so that's where we're at right now. These are moving even quicker than the DNDs, and there's high explosives in the propellant burning ground. There could be high explosives in the deterrent burning ground, or at the burning where it is in the open burning, or whatever. And even this most recent report, the Army, or the report says, it's hard not to get emotional about this. They poo-poo the results that did come back for the high explosives, saying, well, Badger never made that. But Badger had trains full of stuff brought in from offsite and burned. Charlie's told us all these stories. I mean, we know this. And so I have no idea. We have no idea, the collective we. Where is it in the groundwater? It's the same thing with the PFAS. And it's great you're doing these site investigations, but our priority, our collective priority has to be drinking water. And right now, there is no data that you can point to that tells me there's not high explosives in the groundwater and that it's on site or where it is. And so that we need to collectively figure out how to get this testing done, and it has to be a priority.
I'm gonna
We
answer.
have done that.
Chris wants to get a question. Chris wants to get a question in. Can I just, I'm gonna answer your other question, but I'm gonna let Chris in for a bit here.
Okay. Lauren, I appreciate what you're saying, and I hear you loud and clear, because I guess I'm a newbie here. I've only been at it 15 years. So, but what was done here in these settling ponds happened before I got here. But I'm hearing two messages out of this. One, don't make the same mistake again. Learn from what we didn't do before. And I hope the DNR is going to make sure collectively that that's done. Because quite honestly, after we can analyze the heck out of this, and we're doing a good job of analyzing and figuring out what we need to do. But the second message is, it really boils down to when you actually physically, mechanically excavate that you're doing it properly and that you get everything. And I would suggest that there be monitors by the DNR or whoever, when that's actually done, you go out there and just like you're building a road, you stake the perimeters, and you get out there and you actually monitor the depths and make sure that all of the margins are taken care of with respect to excavation. So, number one, don't make the same mistakes you made before. And number two, it really boils down to what you actually do on the ground at the end of this process.
Okay, thanks. So just so you know, in September of 2007, there were 42 wells in the propellant burning ground area that were tested for the explosive scan. It was an 8321A. In January, well, for some people, in January of 2008, I gave a presentation on that sampling event. So we did do all the same compounds that were in the settling pond soil investigation for explosives. 42 wells throughout the above, the waste pits, to the south and south of Settling Pond 2, south of Final Creek, and down gradient on the next well. That was probably in relation to some other RAB meetings, discussions at that time. There was no TNT, nitroglycerin, RDX, or HMX detected. There were some other compounds, nitrotoluenes, a nitrobenzene, and a 2-amino-4,6-dinitrotoluene that were detected in some wells. Those particular compounds at the time didn't have a standard. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we were just looking at this today during our pre-meeting and wanted to make sure at least we mentioned it. That report is available, and we could provide some more information to RAB members about the testing. During that RAB meeting, we did have some maps showing, where the wells were sampled throughout the plume. Also, that report was submitted to the DNR at that time, but Quan and I can work on what we can submit, so at least you can see all the data that was there.
At least a RAB.
Right. There is limited data. There was first of all, here's the problem. When it had shown up before, when we first read the reports about the propellant burning ground, that they had done soil testing. And subsequent to that, there was, as you mentioned, some limited testing, but every time we brought it up, and that includes this most recent report from last year, it's discounted. It says, well, we never made it, and I don't have the exact quote, I can find it, but it says we never made it. And so what's happened over the decades is, this is not the first time I've brought this, the RAB into the argument. There's different players, but it's the same thing. We've asked for this before, and so now to get this more recent report and saying it is there. It's just never been there's never been any follow through on that. And I don't know if it's a function of the fact that we didn't have a standard, but the 2022 report from here, I found it. DNT was detected at very low levels of 2 soil samples. HMX was detected at low levels in one sample. All results were estimated concentrations. The very low detectable concentrations of HMX and TNT could be contractors and others. Could be lab instrumental interference based on the research conducted by previous Army contractors. HMX and TNT were not produced at Badger. And it's that piece right there. It's like we never made it. And for all these years we've been asking for that. And so we can't fix what we've done in the past, but we have to find out if this is off-site and anybody's being exposed right away.
And right, Laura, what you're quoting with that 2022 SI report for this, specifically for the Settling Pond number 2. And because of that results, what we're doing right now with the expanded SI, but all the other settling ponds. So, having said that, when we carry over to the RI phase, we, as everybody's aware, the Army does it based on the CERCLA and the Defense Environmental Restoration Program, the DERP policies, which is utilizing risk-based decision making. But having said that, those explosives will be incorporated into all the risk assessment.
So I can give you guys a little bit of numbers. So all of these other explosive compounds, they were detected but not above the EPA RSL. So what was detected? So TNT was found in 45 different soil samples, and so there were 186 different soil samples collected. So We also had we have HMX, the high melting explosive, that was found in 49 different samples. So just so you know, both of those the majority of them were found in Selling Pond 1, where the majority of the D&T, higher D&T was found. Nitroglycerin, there was 112 samples. Most of those were in the middle of Selling Pond 1. And RDX was only found in 1 sample. So those are like some of the main ones. But there was numerous other compounds that were either detected in 1 or a few samples within that explosive scan screening. So clearly, we're going to be evaluating in the next phase for an RI to do all of these same parameters again to evaluate, because maybe there's a different area that had something and not trying to skip looking for like TNT and stuff.
Sam is gonna let you move on with your meeting, our meeting.
Okay.
Joel, somebody online, Mike Gleason, wanted to comment that one step forward and 3 steps back. We get reports and more tests, but when action is being done to mitigate this, what action is being done to mitigate this over 35-year-old problem? And then he goes on and says that the frustration of the delay after delay is very sad. So another member is voicing their frustration.
Yeah, so the circular process is that you need to get the samples, you need to do the next full remedial investigation, including risk assessment with a feasibility study for alternatives. And so unfortunately that process is long. We have discussed stuff about propellant grains. So I do have a slide about that so we could get into that portion. So unfortunately, that is a long process right now.
And we can't afford to, I have no current, or the data that you just told me, what was that? What was the date for the groundwater sampling? What was that?
Oh, you're going back to,
September 2007.
yeah, 2007. That was where we did the 42 wells in the propellant burning ground.
Do we have enough, does RB have enough information right now to convince all of us that there's no high explosives in the groundwater around Badger, at and around Badger right now? There's nothing.
I can't say from a technical standpoint what.
Well, I can say that the site-wide groundwater remedial investigation that was done, that was before my time, but I would presume that was the process that would take into account all this risk. So I'm not sure, the outcome of that.
Will you commit with DNR to prioritize this, like, right away? Is there potential for offsite, the presence of high explosives offsite in groundwater? If the potential is there, then we need to do it. We can't afford to wait anymore. This is the reason we're still here, how many years later, decades later? We didn't go outside. Everybody was focused in. There was DNR and EPA, and everybody was meeting, and the health officials and we were all meeting, and we didn't test outside until it was too late. People are exposed to bad water for at least 15 or maybe even 20 years, the carcinogens. But right now, I don't see, you can't convince me. Where's the data? We have no off-site groundwater data. We're not even monitoring on-site groundwater. We don't know where it is. All I know is DNT moves faster. Moves faster. So if it's already outside, I would like just, at least from this meeting, I don't want to come back in 3 or 4 months and say, here's some more testing test results. We don't think this, we don't think that. Yeah. The only way to know what people are drinking is to test for it. I think we have a responsibility, and I think as a RAB, we have a responsibility collectively to demand that. That I don't see any way around it. So Army and DNR, I want this prioritized. I want the Army and DNR to come to agreement. I don't want Army to continue to ignore all these requests from the DNR. We shouldn't have to do this. We're wasting a lot of time and resources. Just this meeting, I'm sure, costs a shitload of money. Pardon me.
Mike Gleason had a question. How long should all this take? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50? Or how many years?
CERCLA process definitely is closer to the 5-year point. To get to remediation, it can be longer than that, depending on how long that RI feasibility stage takes. So that's pretty good, right, Kwan? Yeah.
I guess I don't care. If there's a potential exposure happening, or you have little kids, and we're all sitting around here talking about what could be in the water, and you can't give me data. You can't even give me current data on site, much less off site.
Chris?
I'll stop. I made my point, and other people want to know.
Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, another question relative to the sampling methodology that you used to
Speak. Can you speak up just a little bit in case you know?
With respect to the sampling methodology used for these 100-some samples, did you go down deep enough that you reached a point where you know that there was no contamination? And the reason for that question is, how can we be assured that this is not another source point for materials leaching down into the groundwater?
So the 5 feet
You went down
was
here
our
11
vertical, the 5 feet that we went for a lot of the samples was our vertical profile of most of the ponds. Any further investigation will need to make sure you delineate anything vertical that's past that in certain areas. So if you did see something at depth, you definitely need to go back and go deeper and evaluate that. They had done samples down to 25 feet in past investigations in certain areas, because they didn't drill where we drill. We drilled in everywhere that no one ever sampled before. So we definitely need to reevaluate that depth. In the spoils, we were down, 10, 11 feet, and we were trying to evaluate where the spoil depth was. And the intention is that we need to continue figuring out where the spoils are, because they are buried, but it's not a direct contact risk, but is there something sitting in there above settling pond 3, that's still a risk. And so there is a lot of vertical component to all the material that was moved out of settling pond 3 and placed along it in the spoils areas.
Well, my concern is that we didn't just dig it up and move it someplace else and create another source point of contamination, because we don't, unless you know otherwise, we don't have any monitoring wells in that area, do we?
We have a monitoring well, and that's just south of settling pond 2.
It's just over towards where the plume shows, right?
Directly south of settling pond 2, there's a nest along the road that we're starting to sample again. And then we have wells located along the plant boundary south of Final Creek and a portion of settling pond 1. So there have been quite a lot of monitoring, but not as much like right next to each pond that you have a groundwater monitoring well, like feet away from it.
Further down gradient from.
We have a down gradient. We had monitoring wells.
Nothing beyond settling pond 1 or 2. 3, 4,
Yeah.
or the new spoils areas, there's nothing.
There used to be monitoring wells that we had abandoned when the site was closed. There was a lot of wells that I installed around the spoils areas in settling pond 3, and we sampled those for several years. for DNT and VOCs, and at that time it was deemed that there was no risk from that area. Actually close to where Highway 78 is, there were some wells over there too, before it went down towards Gruber's Grove Bay. So those had no DNT over there at that time.
Okay. And were those there for at least a reasonable period of time that you get some perspective
I think they were there
After the
for at least
spoils.
5 years or more.
after the spoils piles were created?
Oh, I'm saying when I installed them, then they were at least monitored for probably a good 5 years or so afterwards, because they're all been in since 2004. So after 2004 at least, when these settling pond wells were installed.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was specifically targeted around trying to evaluate where some of this area, like spoil site, on the north side, 1 and 2, those were of high concern because they had the most material moved from settling pond 4 that would have pumped up to there. And so we were focused on that, and we didn't find any groundwater contamination from that soil that was up there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I do have some more slides, so just so you're aware. We'll maybe move through those a little faster, but so we got to nitroglycerin was in 3 locations in settling pond 1. Maximum was 390. We had it down to 3 feet, right in the middle. So as you can see on here, is that showing? Yeah. So right in the middle of settling pond 1 here, where those 2 circles are, that is where we're finding the nitroglycerin. And so just so people are aware, I reminded them before, is that the nitroglycerin production area is located straight north of this ditch. And so that is like near the central plume. So if we were talking about the central plume before, where does that come from? The nitroglycerin production area is actually up gradient of the central plume. But our nitroglycerin detections and exceedances are in settling pond 1. So all of that detection would come from production wastewater from the nitroglycerin or ball powder area. Only water from those production areas could get to Final Creek. Any water from the nitroglycerin area is all surface water from a different direction. So that's a different area that it would. So just so you're aware is that nitroglycerin production doesn't mean that you're not going to find it in other areas. So it's a key takeaway is that you still need to evaluate all the explosive method when we're evaluating the rest of the site on this side. So there's a lot of wastewater. They may have reproduced something that had nitroglycerin in a different part of the production. We weren't trying to say that it's only on this side of the site or only on this side. So it's a kind of an interesting takeaway from got to look for all the contaminants everywhere. Can't just make an assumption that nitroglycerin is only on one side. And nitroglycerin was used in the making of rocket motors. So as far as arsenic, it was throughout a lot of the area. The arsenic levels are still fairly low site-wide, but there were exceedances, very shallow. Got a map showing exceedances. They go throughout everywhere. The highest number I said was 43. The state does sort of run maybe close to 10 ppm. That's something we got to work with. So that would reduce the whole number of locations, but that's still something we need to evaluate is arsenic. And then propellant grains. So this is showing it's a X in red where there's propellant grains in a soil sample that we collected, and then it's a cross that's purple showing where it was found at the surface. So there's propellant grains found in the northern area of Funnel Creek, and then partway down all the way, and then into Settling Pond 1. Very few throughout Settling Pond 1 ditch, and then one at the end. And no grains so far have been found in Settling Pond 2, 3, or any of the soil disposal areas. I mean, there are, some of them are extremely vegetated or heavily disturbed, like Settling Pond 3, a lot of disturbance from moving to spoils areas. I just want to point out that of all of the grain locations, there's 21 different spots on the map specifically. Only one of them did not have an exceedance for DNT. So it's fairly, some of that is co-located related to a grain, which contains all DNT. I mean, there's a lot of DNT within a propellant grain, plus nitrocellulose. It's all bound up in a very tight, hard mass. It's still tight mass even from World War II. There's very little degradation in the environment that you can see when you look at one grain that might be newer versus older. You have to actually chemically degrade the grain to break it down instead of having just a block. I can't bring one in for a show because it's illegal to transport that, but there's a few pictures here. Every grain that we found has the 7 holes, which is typical of every grain of propellant made in the United States during the same time. Similar process of areas. The heaviest concentration, abundant grains found are in this area of Funnel Creek where you see lots of, and that's many grains. I mean, some of the area we were walking and the DNR's been with us and you're just like, oh, there's one, there's one, there's one, and you can just stand in one area. So clearly if there's anything to go on, that's a big area to evaluate for cleanup. And then right in the beginning of Settling Pond 1, where a lot of water would be slowed down, there's a lot of fallout there. There's some rocky areas in there, and that is another high area of a lot of grains. I'll try to repeat your questions, just so you know, but go ahead.
Can those pictures be enlarged at all? You said you couldn't bring any in, which I understand, that I don't need to see it in person, but.
This is, see how it looks like?
Yeah, here's the mouse. There we are. Is that easier to see, too?
Yes.
Or?
Thank you.
Sure. The museum on site does have replicas of a bunch of the different sizes. So there are 3 different sizes that we found. 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch in diameter, and 3/8 inch to 3/4 of a length. So some are very small, some are fatter, some have different colorations. Depending on maybe when it was made, maybe it was a different type of manufacturing process for a different division of Army or Navy. They made a lot of different propellant for various runs.
So Joel, are those floating? How are they being distributed across the landscape like that?
So during production with the water that was flowing through it, millions of gallons per day, it was being deposited along just like a pebble.
I guess suspended in the water.
Yeah, because it came through the production sewers before it entered Funnel Creek. And I was aware of this, that we had cleaned sewers back before we even did building demo, that we had to have all these sewers cleaned and then everything was hauled off as a waste in roll-off containers. So engineers already knew that they needed, because this was all, the grains were in the buildings when we demoed. You literally were in grains that were left over on the floor in some of the production buildings. So that's the way that we had to have explosive experts take that all off and have that disposed of before we could safely demo some of the production buildings. So I know that there's discussions about an action that the Army is trying to evaluate, doing some kind of a grain pickup, so at least we can remove this initially.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
wanna-
So, yeah, I have prioritized, and I will continue to prioritize to conduct a interim removal action, which would be a form of a non-time critical removal action to at least address the concerns of the observed of preparing grain. And I prioritizes this year. Unfortunately, due to funding challenges, we didn't have a chance to contract that out. But I'm still trying to hopefully do that for the next FY.
So that would be in 27? Is that what you-
FY27, yeah. And when I say that, there's a lot. I know there's a lot of rightfully concerns of the length of time that it takes to do a lot of this renewal action, a lot of test. I get you. I know. But with all this decision document, a decision that the Army makes, somebody had to sign up on that decision, right? So that decision would have to come up with all the documents in advance to show the extent and all the testings and what have you before we can actually select that remedy, which would be obviously some form of excavation and removal of that area. So just keep in mind that when I say FY27, if it gets prioritized by by Army, then that is the process that we would at least start with in terms of contracting. That's another part, and do all the necessary pre-documentations before we get into that stage of the view effort.
Other than the contamination, are these grains still active?
If you were
Throw 'em
if you were
after
to dry them out, yes, they would be dangerous. So you
They
cannot,
need good
if you
powder
keep
back
them
then.
wet, I mean, if they stay wet and moist, there is absolutely no hazard to them. You cannot, do anything with a wet grain. That's why the drying process throughout, you had to dry the grain so it was usable. But yeah, if you did have a fire, like, the fire, if you had a fire and it was constantly at a certain temperature, you could dry the grain out. Yes, it would burn the grain out. I haven't tried it myself and don't plan to. But yeah, I can imagine that it would happen.
And can I also want to add that I think we were anticipating that based on this Settling Pond investigation, which the preparing grain is part of, right? The conclusions that the WNR will probably provide some kind of comments on that, which could help us in terms of getting it prioritized to do the
You
work.
want to do that on a rainy day?
Was that?
You want to do that on a rainy day?
It's not that. I'm not concerned when I'm down there at all with that. We don't use a match, we don't do anything that would harm that way, but we follow our safety protocols when we're down there. So
I have a question. If I'm remembering right from a year ago, wasn't there some comments I thought DNR maybe was going to put up signage?
Oh, yeah, we have, we had, last year we installed 6 signs within the Bluffview side, which is Final Creek and Settling Pond 1, and then 13 signs on the DNR side, which is Settling Pond 2, 3, 4, and the soil disposal areas. So entry points, coming into the property, if you're coming in from the south, if you're coming in from the north, if you're walking towards Settling Pond 2, if you're coming up from the south entrance along Settling Pond 2 where you can access it by walking, there are signs on either side of the road. On the bike trail, there's signs on each side of the gate if you were to go towards Bluffview property. We are looking at, we do have some more that we had purchased last year, and then we were told to stop at the moment while the DNR and Department of Health were evaluating it, but we are planning on installing the rest of the signs that we do have in-house at some point, and working with where else can we, because there's definitely more signs we could put on Bluffview. Of course, we know you're trespassing as soon as you go there, but there are still people that bike and they trespass anyways. We see them. They're not supposed to, but they bike across their property.
So what do the signs say? Just no trespassing?
It was presented
I-
back in July of last RAB, but we could,
I don't have,
yeah, it's my computer, but.
I don't have them
appreciate
again.
that.
I know we had 2 pictures last year that showed the display of what the signs were. You know, warning of soil contamination, fire, not to have, I think it was a fire risk. You're challenging me, I don't have it in front of me,
Yeah,
but
no,
we were
I
looking at it today, but
Yeah, no, I get it. And then I guess I have a follow-up question to what you just said, Joel, to the Department of Health and DNR. It sounds like there was a pause on putting the signs up. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, part of that was that we could coordinate with other portions of DNR, so specifically like the forestry folks, people that do the prescribed burnings, to make sure it meets their needs too. So that's what we talked to them about, but that's a great reminder, and I think we'll probably re-engage to address the signage up and choose those locations. And I can just touch on what the language says on the signs. Again, I don't have it memorized, but state code has kind of like a set list of criteria of what goes into it, and the signs met that. Essentially, it's, you know, your warning, don't touch the soil. Why? Because there's contaminants. Why are there contaminants? Because there's a case here, and who can I contact? And there's a list of contacts there, so.
Great, thank you.
That's the generality of what goes into that, and I'm sure we can find a copy of it. Something.
yeah, we did submit all the preliminary signage and got all feedback, and we submitted it to Bluffview for their feedback because we informed the township that we're gonna be putting signs on their property, and don't think I got much feedback from them. It said, I think they said, sounds good, but they don't, you know, they don't go down there, you know, they don't really use that area very much, let's put it that way. But right next to the wastewater treatment plant, we have signs, so if one of their employees, they can see that now there's a sign that says Final Creek is behind the wastewater treatment plant. Oh, it's on my screen. Where'd it go? No, I think your computer did something and I don't know what happened. It started to flake out and then it was like flicky, so I don't know what happened, but I didn't touch it.
Maybe
Did
it's,
you
it's
lost
a
it?
connecting thing.
Oh, did we lose the connection?
Oh, there it is. Oh, no, this,
Sorry. Yeah, why isn't it up there?
I'm not sure. Let's see. Like that.
Oh, you see him? Has anyone seen him out there?
He has it on his phone.
Oh, did you take a picture of it?
I did.
Oh, okay. They had to be extremely long, so when I ordered, they were specially made to fit that size. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I gotta keep, I think it's like 14, I don't know, they're like 14 inches tall or something,
I'm not sure
what we did.
what you did.
I think I was just standing here and the screen started,
I mean, the HDMI cable should just connect the presentation.
yeah. Oh.
Okay. Gosh, I'm so stuck. Oh, you see the mouse? I cannot see the mouse on the screen.
Oh, it's got a different,
Yeah, no. I'm gonna say, maybe I can just up it from here. Oh, it's almost showing as another monitor. That's what it's showing, you know? And I don't, not sure why it's. Well, you were done with your presentation, right? But I was going to show them other
Yeah, I
stuff
know,
too,
you were gonna show
that's
them
like
stuff.
real-time stuff, but, I mean, I can even see the mouse on here. You know what, I have to go with this right here. And
I was wondering if it's related to your monitor.
If, when you guys get that running, I found the sign in the presentation from last April. I can share my screen if people want to see what it says.
Oh. I'm not sure why it's not showing this, at least.
I was wondering if you want to just
Shut it down.
show monitor, just like,
Do what? Oh, no.
type in monitor in your search bar.
That's not source, that's not here.
Display. Oh, display settings. Now go to display settings up there. See if you have a different display.
Where's display setting at? Oh, here?
Yeah, display settings. Oh, no, it's up here.
I have no idea. Wow. What we can do is just, I can provide the updates on my part, and then I can shut this down while, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I just have to shut this down then. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, sorry about that, everybody. So I was going to provide the next slides in terms of the project management updates. So I guess I can just talk through it. I think most have slides. No, they don't. Next time we could provide slides just in case things like this happen. So for the proposed plan for the site-wide groundwater, as I mentioned before, unfortunately there's no new updates to that. The Army is still waiting for additional funding to begin the bench scale and pilot scale testing of the proposed plan that was chosen for the EVO. So considerations to conduct those bench and pilot tests was based on the comments that we received from the RAB members. And, sorry, 165. And as you're aware, we have provided the responses to those comments that we received. The only thing that I want to add is that since then we have filed those responses into the administrative records. So that's locations where if anybody's interested, they can look for that. So it should be also on the WNO website, I believe. So and that was something I was going to show you all where to find those reports. So I will pause there for the proposed plan if anybody has any questions.
Ron,
Yes.
what's your timeline for
Yeah.
starting that process?
Yeah. Like I mentioned with the propellant grains, the removal, that was also, the bench scale test was also something I programmed for this year. I just, due to shift in priorities and sequences of Army's enterprise requirements, that I will continue to add that to FY27 programming to start that. But that's going to be subject to availability of funding again.
The bench testing or the pilot or
Both. Yes. Yeah, bench test obviously going to happen first before the pilot, but then both are going to be kind of as one package in terms of the award of it. But I just want to repeat myself. Those are something that I will prioritize for FY27, subject to availability of funding. So just keep that in mind. And as always, I will keep you guys informed on the most up-to-date on that. And so for the Gruber Grove Bay data gap investigation, where the Army has been conducting characterization of the bay to assist with the future remedial designs or remedial actions. To recap, the work that was conducted under the contract was through the Corps of Engineers to perform the supplemental investigation to delineate the nature and extent of the mercury in the areas of the previously identified data gap. So this data gap investigation, which is also short for DGI, resulted in a report the Army submitted to DNR for review. And after several back and forth since then, the DNR approved of that DGI report back in January of this year. And the DGI report is the next step is to complete the feasibility study report. And we were planning to do that report possibly in-house within the Army instead of contracting that out because of all the funding challenges. So I think it's something that we may be capable of doing. So we will share that document with the RAB members and the DNR at the same time to provide your reviews. So the next one will be, I believe the slides was, the Army is also planning to install 2 nests of monitoring wells to support with delineation of the central plume. The locations of the proposed wells, which obviously I don't have a figure to illustrate where it's located, but you have the slides. Will be installed at the depth of approximately 125 and 190 feet. So there can be 2 wells at each of this nests, one at different depth. Once those are installed, the new wells will be sampled semi-annually, twice per year for the 6 DNT isomers and annually for VOCs. These wells are requested by WNR back in October of 2022, and installations of these wells are referenced in the recently submitted groundwater sampling plan. So with that, I'm sorry, I don't have the figures to show you, but did you have any question on those wells installation? And I forgot to say, we were planning to install those wells hopefully around after July of this year.
Back on Gruber's Grove Bay, you said feasibility study be done in-house.
Yes.
Would that be yet this fiscal year?
If it's done in-house, then, it would be just me doing in-house, so that's just me, based on my capacity, and I will try to get something started.
Was at a previous meeting, we were told some of 27, the actual work on the ground. Is that still a viable target?
Oh, for the dredging itself?
Yeah.
No, not for FY27, because once a feasibility study is done, that is where the alternatives will be, evaluated, right? Mechanical dredging, hydraulic dredging, what have you. And then from there, you guys can have the option, a chance to provide public comments on the proposed plan of that particular alternative. And then from there, just a regular decision needs to be signed before that next phase of dredging, which would be the remedial action phase, is begun. And that's not including design time to do all that.
So are we looking probably at 2028 before we?
I would say more than that, to be honest with you, Chris, because there's going to be a lot of, I'm sure, discussions and comments received. That's we need to address, and of course, once we do the feasibility study, possibly in-house, then the other documents, a proposed plan, the record decision, we have to contract that out, too. So that's just another layers of getting funding for that. Let me see, I'm trying to get my screen back here. So I can show you the Yeah. So, I don't know what happened in terms of.
There, your street came back.
Oh, there it is. Hey, okay. I won't let Joe touch it this time.
I guess we're using my computer next time.
Probably faster than mine.
I think the problem was he did touch it for a little while, and he wouldn't sleep. And then it was-
Oh, yeah, it was a long time of questions.
Still not showing it.
So it's on your screen?
Yeah.
So it's gotta be something beyond the display.
Oh. Yeah, that's beyond my capacity to think about that right now. But I can tell you, though, based on the slides I have at least open right now, the next RAB meetings are July 16th, and then October 8th, January, April, the third Thursday of every month, pretty much. So, and what I was going to provide to show you was the available resources, locations to locate those documents online. But let me see if it's. Oh, yeah, the websites I can open up. So having said that, can I maybe do that? I could, I could provide that the websites and the information on that on the meeting minutes for y'all to look at, if that helps. But I would like to show you how to navigate to it, just for, make it easier. Do you have any more questions online, Mark, or?
I have a question, this is Laura.
Yes, Laura.
We were talking about funding and availability of funding for the things that we collectively want to accomplish in and around Badger. For testing for the high explosives, or for any work, similar investigation, is it easier for you, not you personally, but Army to get funding for these projects if you have a request from regulators to do so?
It definitely doesn't hurt, but obviously, as anything with regulators' involvements or requests, it still have to go through, reviews within our legal and make sure that we still are following the CERCA policies and the DIRT policies. But it doesn't hurt. That's I can tell you that.
Right. So, I guess I'm gonna pick on DNR for a minute. DNR, can you tell me, can you assure the Army and everybody in the room and me that there are not high explosives in the groundwater at Badger, that it does not pose any risk? Or is that also a question that the department has?
Yeah, I would say off the top of my head, as an individual, I can't say that, but that was one of the main notes I wrote down, and asterisks as important to go back and look to. So I think Luke and I, that's probably going to be one of our main priorities, to look at that data and see where that's at right now. But off the top of my head, I don't want to misspeak by any means.
No, it's okay. Thank you. I'm glad to see that's going to be a priority. I know I had talked to you guys about we need to make sure that people know about this. I think this meeting is a good start. I know somebody from the local paper is on the call. Because even if we can't make this testing happen now, if that question is out there and we're unable to answer it, people still have choices. They can monitor for, lobby for funding as individuals. They can test the water themselves and get a different alternative water supply. But I think after this meeting, collectively, we need to make sure that the residents in the area are informed that this question has been raised and we do not have answers yet. We can't go back where we were before. If there are still questions, I would encourage the department to put it on a piece of paper and say that we've already passed a number of resolutions in this regard. Individuals can try to get funding, lobby, that's the word, because individuals, we can lobby for funding, we can contact. But in order to get this ball rolling, we first need somebody to say, these are valid questions, we want answers, and I think we can all work together to make that happen. I don't want to become who's going to win this. I think collectively, if we can get an answer to that question and we can get data, I think we can all get behind that. There's been complaints about sea swab sometimes, believe it or not. And especially when the plant was operating, they said, but when sea swab got on them, the money came through. So there's kind of a love-hate thing there. Because as private citizens, we can do that. And all of us around this table have learned a lot. And I think we have a responsibility as informed, now that we've been informed that this is a question. So let's keep the dialogue open. We need the DNRs to raise this as a question, and we want to get funding to do so. And there needs to be a competitive bid for who does, I don't care, the testing too. I don't want this to go to whoever's done it all before. It should be a bid, not a whatever. There's something called when there's no competition for that. We can put a request out for proposals for funding. I don't care how we get it done. I'm willing to help fundraise on the private level, but after all this decades of work, I just can't imagine we can't leave it this way. This question has to be answered. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong and there's no high explosives in the groundwater and it hasn't gone anywhere. I hope I'm wrong.
So I got my site up. These are the 3 active sites that you can search for within the DNR's BERT system. So showing we have propellant burning ground. I don't see the other.
Yeah, missing one.
Yeah, missing one.
Yeah.
Where's the other one?
That should be 4.
The main
Yeah,
one's called Badger Army, it's not BAAP.
Oh, okay. So if you say you want to go to the settling ponds, so now you're in the settling ponds view, and you scroll down, and then it populates. So site inspection report you see, and if you were to click on that PDF icon, it would download the inspection report that we were just discussing, and you can see correspondence dating back to 2021. So we have, like say here is a site activity report, PDF, could be the site inspection for the settling pond 2, and you can even go way back when they started putting stuff in 2014 when the site was originally closed. There's a lot more documentation before that.
Can you show them the key is the identifier that DNR uses. So
Oh, yeah.
know those numbers, the BERT numbers, right? That's to the left, far left,
Yeah.
and then show them how to enter that. Because I don't think that's the first page that they see.
Correct.
They have to go to the page where it's the
Oh,
search engine. The search.
Yeah. So when you search,
And then, yeah, that's
So I typed in BAAP in my search, and I also clicked in open, but you can go in,
Activity number for
Where
our
is it? it's right here, you type in the activity number for each, but it cannot have a hyphen.
Yeah, hold on, we get.
Yeah, so for instance, if we wanted, I should have it memorized, but it's
Like, 0257.
that, oh, you have it? Oh, you just have me type it in?
Yeah.
0 what?
0257 001002. And this one is for overall badger investigation, groundwater, Google Grove Bay.
Yep, so when you click on the name for badger, so now you can see it'll populate comments on the proposed plan as the most recent document from the DNR. There is a groundwater sampling plan, which is the second one here from March of '23. That is a very large file, 28 megabytes. That's all the maps, all the sampling plan that we're going to be doing. Any remediation, investigation report that we're submitting directly on groundwater. Gruber's Grove Bay would be in this also. So PDFs or various updates, DNR letters that they're submitting. And this particular one, I mean, you can see we're still only in 2022. There's a lot of documents in there. So on the right side, they're trying to explain what I type it in when I upload documents. The DNR also uploads documents directly of what, like the bottom here says groundwater 2022 monitoring report. So we're currently doing April groundwater monitoring now, so it's going to be a similar type of submittal as that for when we submit our April groundwater.
Joe, could you scroll up to the top, please? So the document that was uploaded yesterday was from the DNR. And I just wanted to say my thanks to the DNR for not only telling us where these are, and it's great that you're showing us, but I hope you all have checked your email, because now they're sending them to us. So we don't have to try to figure out, I appreciate knowing how, but so that we're getting them directly. And this particular document is important because it's talking about the cancer risks inside and outside of the plant. And the DNR now saying we are really going to stick to our guns and we're going to require the same level both inside and outside of the boundaries. So I really appreciate, DNR, your work on this, and I appreciate knowing how to navigate it because it's hard to do. And thank you for letting us know how to do that, Kwong. I do appreciate it. But I hope you all have read it. If not, please do. It's a really important letter.
Yeah, it's 3.5 pages.
I think I also showed the AC website. So the DNR website is showing their, all the drafts versions of it, whereas the AC website will just show the final versions of the documents that we upload, including the RAB slides and the meeting minutes.
Waiting. It says it's waiting. Waiting for the website to load. But,
Do you Google it?
yeah, I did. I can go back. I don't know why.
But it's really simple though. All you can have access to Google. Just type in AEC Badger, and we'll give you a link actually to it right there.
So that's where
Yeah, that's AEC website right there, and you just click on that.
now it came up. Okay.
Yep, and then go under resources on the top, and then that's where all the uploaded final documents for slides, RAB slides, meeting minutes, and other technical reports that we've provided there. And in addition, like I mentioned earlier, we also provide the final copies into the administrative records, which is located at the local libraries. I'm going to provide this again in the meeting minutes to capture that, so y'all can have that information. So
We can send you the direct links to the Bert's websites too, if you want to cover those in the meeting minutes, if that'd be helpful.
so the only link I have is just like the search link, which is I think they could just, unless you want to have a specific link to each of the sites, that's fine too.
Yeah, we can send you, if you want to throw them in, that's fine.
But I think when you move forward, I guess, we would try to provide the RAB members with the emails also when we send those correspondence, just to have their communication. All right. I think I mentioned this already, so if anybody else has any other questions for tonight's meeting, all right, we really appreciate everybody's questions again, and I hear you. Thank you. Other than that, I guess we can adjourn for tonight's meeting. Sorry about the technical difficulties. That's so weird. It's an old computer. They never give me a new one. They run out of money. I asked for
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different, like, different contaminants, different